4.8 million years ago, the earth was wild, raw, and untamed. Africa's savannas stretched endlessly beneath a blazing sun, where predators ruled the night and survival was not guaranteed. In this ruthless world, our ancestors were not yet masters of fire or language. They were fragile, curious beings fighting for existence. Every day was a test of instinct, hunger, and courage. The early humans didn't have tools of comfort or certainty. They had only their wits, their senses, and the eternal rhythm of nature to guide them. What they ate, how they hunted, and how they adapted shaped not just their survival, but the very foundation of who we became. This is the story of the survival diet that forged humanity itself. The earth breathed differently 4.8 million years ago. Winds whispered through the tall golden grass of the African plains, carrying the scent of rain and danger alike. Beneath that endless sky, life moved in delicate balance, every creature part of an ancient rhythm that pulsed with survival. In this world of raw beauty and unforgiving power, two ancient souls wandered, bound not by time but by something older, a promise made long before the dawn of memory. They were not yet human as we know it. Their bodies were lean, their senses sharp, their minds stirring with the first faint flickers of awareness. The male roamed the open savanna, his feet hardened by stone and heat. The female lingered near the river valleys, gathering fruit, watching the shadows stretch across the water. They did not know words, yet they knew each other. In their eyes burned a recognition deeper than speech, the quiet knowing of souls that had once shared the same breath. But the land was merciless. The earth cracked under drought. Predators lurked in the tall grass, lions, saber-toothed cats, hyenas with laughter that chilled the bones. Food grew scarce, and the boundary between life and death was a fragile thread. One night, as the moon rose pale and watchful, the male crossed a barren plain in search of food. A sudden storm rolled over the horizon, its fury tearing the sky apart. Lightning split the air. The floodwaters came swiftly, swallowing the earth, separating him from the valley where she waited. In that moment of chaos, something eternal broke, not their connection, but their body's fragile link to time. He perished in the flood. She survived, carrying within her the echo of loss, a grief older than words. Yet, the universe has a memory far longer than any creature's life. And so, as ages turned and species evolved, those two souls drifted through the spiral of existence, drawn together by invisible threads of longing. The land continued to shape those who walked upon it. Harsh winds carved endurance into their bones, scarcity taught them wisdom, hunger made them creators. From the dust and the pain, new forms of life emerged, more cunning, more aware, carrying fragments of those ancient souls within. They met again, lifetime after lifetime, across shifting ages, sometimes as foragers at the dawn of humankind, sometimes as wanderers under strange constellations. Each reunion was brief, like the flicker of firelight against stone, yet enough to remind them that love, like survival, is not a moment but a force that defies extinction. The harsh landscape was their teacher, and through its trials, they learned the first sacred truth of existence, that even in a world ruled by hunger and death, the heart remembers. Across eons, through bodies and names and worlds reborn, the two ancient souls continued their silent vow to find one another again and again, until the earth itself forgot how to breathe. When the storm subsided and the earth began to breathe again, the world entered a gentler rhythm, yet survival still demanded reverence. The plains shimmered with life, acacia trees whispering in the wind, rivers curling like silver veins across the dust, and small fruits glistening beneath the sun's tender glare. It was here that the first foragers, our distant ancestors, began to understand that the land, though cruel, could also be kind. Among them walked two souls reborn in new forms, drawn once again by the quiet magnetism of memory. She wandered the valley slopes, her keen eyes scanning for berries and roots. He roamed the distant ridge, guided by instinct and something softer, a faint ache he couldn't name. The earth had changed their faces, their bodies, yet the thread between them pulsed beneath the skin like an unspoken prayer. In those early days, to eat was to listen. The first foragers did not yet dominate the land, they conversed with it. They tasted the bitterness of bark, learned which leaves healed and which burned, and followed the silent wisdom of the animals. Through trial and pain, they discovered what could sustain them. Hunger was their teacher, intuition their compass. The female soul, in her searching, found a cluster of roots after days of emptiness. She dug with trembling hands, whispering thanks to the soil, an act not yet called prayer, but already sacred. As she ate, she felt something stir, a memory not her own, a flicker of another life drowned in the flood. The taste of the root carried a strange familiarity, a warmth that reached beyond hunger. Somewhere far across the plain, the male soul paused, his breath catching without reason. The wind carried her scent, faint, earthy, ancient, and though he could not find her, he lifted his gaze to the same horizon she watched, the same setting sun. Two souls recognizing one another through the veil of time. Their connection was the quiet pulse behind evolution itself. Each discovery of food, each lesson of survival, each shared moment of awe before the mysteries of the land, all were part of the universe's plan to bring them closer not just to each other but to awareness itself. For the act of foraging was more than survival. It was the awakening of relationship between being and earth, between self and the unseen. The first foragers lived on instinct, but somewhere in that rhythm of searching and finding, of losing and remembering, the heart began to awaken. They were learning the same truth the universe had always known, that what feeds the body is only the beginning. The true nourishment lies in connection, the invisible thread between souls, between lifetimes, between the hand that reaches into the soil and the sky that watches in silence. And so they continued, separate yet intertwined, walking the same earth, breathing the same wind, gathering not just food, but fragments of each other, scattered across the ages. The earth grew harder then, the rains came less often, and the rivers thinned into whispers. The lush green of the valleys faded into gold and dust, and hunger returned like an old, relentless ghost. The first foragers had learned the songs of the plants, but now, even the roots they once trusted began to dry and wither. In this new silence of scarcity, survival required something different, a fierce, daring kind of wisdom. It was during this age of desolation that the scavengers were born. They were watchers at first, quiet observers of the hunt. From afar they watched lions bring down their prey, the air trembling with roars and dust. When the predators had eaten their fill and left bones behind, these early humans crept closer, guided by the pulse of hunger and the dim spark of ingenuity. They broke bones with stones, tasting the marrow that no beast had claimed. That first taste of hidden life changed everything. It was the beginning of human curiosity, the whisper of a mind awakening. Among them moved two souls, ancient wanderers of the eternal story. The female soul, still burdened by the echo of past loss, searched along the ravished plains. Her body remembered the art of gathering, but now she gathered courage more than fruit. One evening, as the sun sank red and raw, she came upon a carcass abandoned by hyenas, a torn reminder of nature's cruel feast. Fear held her still. Yet hunger, deeper than the bodies, urged her forward. She struck a stone against the bone, once, twice, and from that fragile moment of courage came the first spark of fire within her spirit. Unseen, far across the plain, the male soul also searched. He too had learned to follow the vultures, to read the flight of birds as signs of survival. That night, as he broke a bone and tasted the same forbidden marrow, he felt something stir, a strange warmth in his chest, as though the very stars were whispering her name. They were still divided by fate and distance, yet through the shared act of survival, their souls began to remember. In the eyes of those early scavengers, the world was both teacher and mirror. Death was no longer only an ending. It became a source of life, a sacred exchange written into the design of existence. Through the bones of fallen beasts, they learned that everything, every life, every loss, was part of an ancient cycle of return. And in that revelation, something human began to take shape: reverence. They did not yet know language, but they knew gratitude. They did not yet build fires, but within them burned a new flame, the first light of understanding that to survive was not to conquer, but to listen, to take only what the world offered and to honor it. As the night stretched across the land, the two souls lifted their gaze to the same stars, distant suns reflecting a promise older than time. Though fate still kept them apart, the universe itself conspired to draw them nearer, teaching them through hunger, loss, and the bones of the earth that love, like life, always finds its way back. A new dawn came, slow and golden, stretching over the bones of an ancient world. The scavengers had survived, but now something within them began to change, not just the body, but the spirit. Their hands grew stronger, their eyes more curious, their hunger more refined. They were no longer simply surviving, they were learning to shape the world around them. In that quiet shift between instinct and awareness, humanity was being born. The land offered new challenges and new gifts. Fire, once a fearful mystery flashing in the storms, became a companion. Perhaps it was by accident, a branch struck by lightning, a flicker carried by wind, but one night, the male soul stood before the flame and did not flee. Its warmth wrapped around him like memory. He saw in its light a reflection of something eternal, the same glow that had burned through every life he had lived, the same light that lived in her eyes. He fed it, protected it, and for the first time, humanity tamed the wild energy of the cosmos itself. Across the plains, the female soul watched the horizon as smoke curled upward from a distant ridge. She didn't yet know what it was, but her spirit stirred. The same invisible thread that had tied them across centuries began to pulse once more. She felt warmth in her chest, as if her own heart was calling out, remembering the flame, remembering him. With fire came transformation. The first humans began to roast their food, softening roots, tenderizing meat, and unknowingly unlocking more energy, more thought, more life. With every meal cooked beneath that sacred light, the mind awakened a little more. They began to dream not just of survival, but of meaning. They started to gather, to share food around the fire, and for the first time, they looked into one another's eyes, not with fear, but with recognition. Connection was born beside that flame. It was in such a moment that the two souls met again. Drawn by smoke and hunger, she came to his fire. They stood before it in silence, two beings who had found each other in a world still learning what love meant. They could not speak, yet their hearts understood. In her gaze, he saw every lifetime they had lost. In his presence, she felt every promise kept. The fire between them was more than warmth, it was memory, reunion, destiny. Through their bond, humanity learned something profound, that to eat was not only to survive, but to celebrate the sacred exchange of life. Each meal, each act of sharing, was a ritual, a quiet acknowledgement that existence itself was woven from giving and receiving. As the flames danced, illuminating their faces, the wind whispered through the grass like a lullaby from the cosmos. And though time would once again scatter them into different lives, the memory of that fire, of connection, of awakening, would live on in every human heart that gathered to share a meal beneath the open sky. As centuries passed, the earth shifted once more. The plains rippled with the memory of storms and sun, of fires long gone cold. Humanity, once fragile and uncertain, now carried within it a spark that would never fade, the spark of creation. The same hands that once tore flesh from bone now shaped stones into tools. The same eyes that once watched in fear began to look toward the horizon with curiosity. Something extraordinary was happening, the birth of imagination. The male soul, now reborn in yet another form, wandered the edge of a vast valley. His tribe had learned to carve tools from obsidian, to use fire not only for warmth but for wisdom. He carried in his heart a faint longing, a dream that visited him in sleep, a vision of a woman by a river, her eyes dark as the earth after rain. He did not know her name, yet the memory of her guided his hands, shaping every act of creation with a strange tenderness. Across the land, the female soul lived again, her spirit woven into a body strong and graceful. She had become a gatherer, a teacher, one who showed others how to use stones to crush seeds, how to weave reeds into baskets, how to listen to the quiet rhythm of the wind. Each act of learning, each tool she crafted, carried the same sacred pattern, the unfolding of awareness, the slow remembering of something eternal. And so it was that ingenuity became not merely survival, but art, a reflection of the divine impulse that moves through all living things. To create was to mirror the universe itself, to bring forth from chaos the order of purpose. Through invention, the early humans began to speak in a language older than words, the language of intention, of imagination, of soul. One dusk, as shadows grew long, their paths crossed once again. He was sharpening a stone beside the river. She approached to fill her basket. The sound of water merged with the quiet rhythm of their breath. They looked at each other, not as strangers, but as beings who had been searching through lifetimes. In that single gaze, they remembered everything. The flood that had taken him, the fire that had united them, the hunger that had shaped their becoming. They shared food beside the water, laughter rising softly into the twilight air. Around them, their tribe watched, unaware that what they witnessed was more than companionship. It was the continuation of an ancient vow, that love and evolution are not separate forces, but one. Through them, humanity learned cooperation, the power of many minds united by purpose. The tools they shaped became extensions of thought. The shelters they built became reflections of belonging. And beneath it all, the two souls kept dancing in time with creation itself, carrying forward the essence of what it means to be human, to seek, to learn, to love, and to remember. For even as the ages turned and their forms changed again and again, one truth endured. Ingenuity was never born from the mind alone, but from the heart, from the eternal meeting of two souls who, despite time and fate, always found their way back to each other.